Hello, everyone. This is Keith Stone with the Center for Hellenic Studies, and this is the version 11 of HeroesX office hours. We're here to discuss questions 1 and 2 for the first 2 hours of the project, and I'm here with Professor Gregory, Nagy, and Sarah and Janet and Elen, our usual companions. And the first 2 questions that we'll discuss, actually, they're very long, so I'm going to read them one at a time. The first one is, in scroll 1 of the Homeric Iliad, at the very beginning of the narration, the master narrator invokes a goddess who is a muse. In the ancient world, this muse was generally understood to be Calliope. This Calliope, myth has it, was mother of Orpheus, a singer who was thought to predate Homer. Why do you think that the master narrator of the Iliad invokes this one muse in scroll 1, and not the many muses who are invoked later in scroll 2? In shaping your answer to this question, consider the heroic world that is narrated by Homer, who was generally thought to be, or understood to be, the master narrator of the Iliad. What are people saying in response to this question?
Well, we've had a lot of answers and some discussion, but I'll just sort of pick out maybe 1 or 2. They're talking a bit about just the very opening and how succinct that is, and that there's one muse, one overarching theme, the anger of Achilles, one person, and so that they're saying maybe that seems fitting for a single muse there, and perhaps later on where there are other details, maybe other muses are needed to be called upon. So that's one suggestion.
Mm-hmm. I remember reading that one. I liked the way that one was expressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah, and that kind of compression, we'll see that many other places at the beginning of the Odyssey as well. Yeah, speaking of, I guess, the unity of number and the question of number in general, there was someone else who talked about the development of the number of the muses. That we talk about 1 in this question. There are 3 muses in some conceptions. There are 9 muses in other conceptions.
Yes. I like the one where it's only 3, but it's local. It can be pinpointed to a locale to the north of Athens, and there the names are. I love the names: Mneme, Melete, and Aoide. So Mneme is memory. You might say memorization. Melete is practice, almost like dress rehearsal. And then Aoide means just singing, but it's an omnium gatherum term for the execution, the performance. So memory, practice, and then singing, which is the execution of the song.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more practical than those names that we have for 9 muses, as in the Hesiotic Theogony.
Yeah, things get very complicated, a little hard to, Baroque maybe is what I want to say.
So Greg, if I can pin you down, you asked in the question about, well, if it is one muse here and it was understood to be Calliope, and then you're saying there are 3, at a time where there were 3 muses, which of the 3 is being evoked?
Well, I think I would have to guess that in that case it would be Aoide. Well, but you know, the moment I say that, I want to change my mind. Then it would be Mneme, maybe just memory, because after all, Mnemosune means memory, and she is the mother of the muses. So there you see me hesitating. It's very hard once you get away from the soloist model.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you might need all of them, you know, in a way. But one of the participants, you know, was wondering if it was some kind of, in some ways, an act of ritual a prayer to the Muse, seeking her aid and permission to recount the story, because it seems to come back to very often. So,
yes,
you know.
I agree. You might say that to have many muses is to allow for synthesis, to allow for the possibility that there are many different versions. Whereas when you have only one muse, the implication is that there's just one version that is true, and that the others are somehow not true or not nearly as true. And it's interesting to me that in the Hesiodic Theogony, of the 9 muses, Calliope is the one who really gets special treatment. Why? Because she is the one who inspires kings as well as poets. And she inspires the ideal king. So you might say, well, in that case, Calliope is the ideal muse. But if she's the ideal muse, how come the poet of the Iliad and the poet of the Odyssey, whom we might think of as the same person, how come that poet doesn't name Calliope, just says muse, as if everybody knew what the muse would be? So it's tricky.
Can I pick up on that actually? Because somebody's also noted that that Calliope in the Theogony sings to kings, and one of their functions of kings is settling disputes. And they've said, well, at the beginning here, it homes in immediately on a dispute.
Yes, yes, yes. And the impression that I always get every time I come back to this is how much water under the bridge has already flown by the time this particular wording emerges. Imagine all the thousands of retellings and thousands of variations. And this is a real act of streamlining. And to go back to the participant who said, well, there's really one primary hero in the Iliad. Well, why shouldn't there be one primary muse? It makes sense. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but our discussion now will be very valuable, I think, when people start reading the Odyssey, because there everything is so multiple. So I love the way in the Odyssey, the poet of the Odyssey says, well, start anywhere you want, muse. What is that?
In a wish is the best muse.
Yes, yes. So presumably wherever that muse starts is the best place to start.
Let's go on to question 2.
Yes.
Which I'll read now. When the old man Phoenix begins to tell the story about Meleagros and Cleopatra in Scroll 9, he does not invoke any muse. How do you interpret the absence of such an invocation? In shaping your answer to this question, consider again the heroic world that is being narrated. It is relevant to that world, of course, that the narrator here is Phoenix and not the master narrator.
I kind of gave it away with that last sentence.
I was thinking that.
Do you think that last sentence helped the participants enough, or maybe not enough?
So the power of master narrator and the power of Phoenix, who has more power to recall, to invoke the muses?
Well, it's true that technically Phoenix might have more power, but then we don't know whether Phoenix saw or heard any of this. So I would say that he is invoking the privilege of being quoted by the muse. After all, the master narrator is hearing everything directly from the muse. If I, Phoenix, speak within that medium, then I am channeling that same medium. So when I, Phoenix, say, I remember exactly, it's not that he necessarily saw and heard the story of Meleagros. In fact, I think it wouldn't even work logically that he was around for any of that. It's that he's part of the medium, and the medium has total recall. Therefore, if the medium embeds Phoenix as a speaker, then Phoenix has total recall, or at least that's what he claims. It's a wonderful authorizing kind of poetics, which is whatever makes it into the Iliad, whatever makes it into the Odyssey is truth, unless there's something in the narrative that destabilizes what any person says. And I say that even about Odysseus. I know we're jumping ahead again, but I think that's okay. It'll be interesting, I think, for our participants to come back to this conversation when we start the Odyssey, because the Odyssey is more complicated, at least on the surface. And there it becomes very clear that Odysseus, whatever he says, is testing his listeners whether they really get the inner truth or not. So it's much more challenging to decipher what is true and what is not true, what is genuine and what is not genuine, but it's there. In the Iliad, it's supposed to be pretty clear, and it's usually motivated very well. It's certainly motivated very well in Iliad 9. Whatever Phoenix says is, even if he doesn't interpret it right, what he actually reports is right. So it's the power of the medium would be, I hope, not a simplistic answer, is anything that makes it, I'll go back to that formula, has to be considered all important. I think of the book of Richard Martin about mythos. Every time a speaker is said to have a mythos that is said, that means it's for the record. And what do we mean for the record? For the cosmic record. This is eternity watching on, and eternity is validating what is being reported. And sometimes what is being reported might be difficult to grasp, but it's supposed to be all there. It's kind of scary, even for me, to say this after having spent a whole lifetime studying this, is I'm saying, this is a really important challenge. This is the most important thing you can hear.
Yes, and one of the participants notes that the story of Meleagros was part of the oral tradition of the noblest of Greek heroes, and was probably familiar to the to most of ancient Greek audiences. So, yeah.
And I hope you don't mind that I use the science fiction term channeling, but in a sense, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about an absolute source of authority. And when that source speaks through the poet, and I'm talking about the Muses, who really were there and who heard everything, who saw everything, then this is very, very important to pay attention to it and to savor every detail, to be respectful of it, not to question it.
So I think we have to wrap it up here. We've about reached our time. So I will leave you all with a word of encouragement. There's a lot of reading, and there are a lot of responses to these first questions, and that's great. And I hope you can keep it up. But if you can't, don't be discouraged. There's plenty of time. So hang in there.
And you all noticed how much leeway there is in how to grapple with very difficult questions. And I couldn't help but want to echo what Keith says and what Janet and Elaine and Sarah say about how important it is not to be discouraged. Just keep on pushing ahead. It'll all come together.